it's Sheena Pink, independent GelMoment distributor. I wanted to show you guys what our polish should look like when you are applying it. So I'm using Siren Seduction. It is a more translucent polish, so it's never going to have that full rich effect that our more solid colors will give you. So just be mindful of what polish you are using, if it's more translucent or if it's supposed to be more solid. Now, the first coat should look very, very thin. As you can see, I've done one coat on my 3 nails, very, very thin. The other thing you want to do each layer is do a cap. Be very mindful when you are capping that the polish is not going over and under the nail and creating sort of a glob of it. If you end up doing that and curing it, what will happen is it'll just rip right off and it'll take the whole cap of polish with it. So just a really, really thin coat. The other thing that could happen is if you do too thick of a coat when you're capping it, what's going to happen is when you're curing it, it's just going to retract and go right back onto your nail because it self-levels. It's going to adhere to the polish that is thicker and heavier. So just really, really thin coats on the nail and on the top. If you're finding that your polish is just really runny or really translucent and it's not supposed to be, what you can do is roll it in between your hands and warm it up, especially if it's cold. You really want to warm up your polish in your hands. And then what I do is I do one thin layer and I get a nice application on, and then I cap, and then I go back and just smooth it out. What happens is if you cap your nail and you don't do another layer of polish or swoop it back over, basically you're going to have like a little bump at the top of it, and you're going to notice. You're going to want to get rid of that. So it's important to basically do one layer, cap it, and then go back and just smooth out the top part. So this is the second layer. Again, this is a more translucent polish, so I'm not going to get that full coverage effect, but it should look very thin each time. Gel polish you do not want to put on thick. What will happen is when you cure it, it may seem cured, but maybe like an hour or so later, the underneath it will actually start to ripple and bubble because underneath it hasn't had a chance to cure because it just went on too thick. So I usually do 2 to 3 coats. The only time I might do 4 coats, again, really thin layers, is when I do like white. I find it goes on sometimes a little streaky. And now, if your polish is going on streaky, which is usually white is the one I find that happens, I actually just tap my fingers on the table, maybe for about 20 seconds, and what will happen is that will allow it to self-level and it'll get rid of those streaks. If you happen to get a lot underneath your nail, what I do is, that's why I always have a little brush. I just take it and just take off any excess that might have gone underneath my nail, so that when I cure it, I'm not going to have a big buildup of polish underneath, which will risk, again, it'll rip and it might take your polish with it, and that is a big problem I see when people are capping their nails. So here I am tapping it up. That's what you're gonna do if you find that your polish is just not self-leveling the way it wants to do it. I find with the thicker polish, especially white, that sometimes happens. So again, tap it for 20 seconds and you'll actually notice a big difference. Also, in addition to all this, you'll notice that a lot of those thinner coats of polish, they will actually get darker and more full about maybe 10-15 minutes after you've cured it, because it's really warm. It'll actually cool, and you'll actually notice that the color, the true color, will actually present itself rather than the color right after it cures. So I hope that helps regarding what it should look like per layer as well as capping. If you don't like that translucent look, you can just do a color like what lovey-dovey underneath it and do one layer and then put a translucent polish over top of it if you want a more richer solid color.